Hey everyone, this is J.R. Simmer again here in Nashville, Tennessee with Emerald Bay East. Today I just want to kind of talk to you about setting up an aquarium, the basic stuff that you will need for an aquarium. Now, a lot of these things that I point out you may or may not need right from the get-go. This aquarium right here is a 62-gallon deep blue reef-ready tank. Reef-ready meaning that it contains the overflows and everything in the back of the tank, so that we don't have to have a canister filter hooked up to this. When setting up a tank, you want to go with the biggest tank that you possibly can, simply just because bigger tanks are easier to maintain than smaller tanks. Simply just because if you have a snail die in a little 5-gallon tank compared to a 60-gallon tank or a 100-gallon tank, it's going to change the water chemistry a lot different. So keep in mind, when you go shopping for the tank, it's always best and ultimately cheaper to buy the bigger tank in the long run than it is to buy a smaller tank now, all the equipment you need for that. And then a little bit later on down the road, get rid of that and go with a bigger aquarium. Setting up an aquarium for a reef ready, obviously you're going to need sand, live rock, and your filtration system. I'll talk a little bit more about that here after we speak about the stuff inside the aquarium. Going back up to the top of the aquarium, the main part of the aquarium, this tank is kind of still a young tank. It's only been set up for about 2 or 3 months, and it is pretty much packed. I wouldn't suggest any new hobbyists getting into the hobby to pack their aquarium this full quite as fast, just because there's still a lot to learn after the aquarium's been set up. And I would hate for anybody to invest a lot of money into the aquarium and then a couple months or 6 months down the road have a crash. Simply with setting up the aquarium, after you put your sand and your rock in, you want to make sure that you have the proper lights to grow the corals that you will have. There's so many different types of lights out there, and I'll speak about different lighting later on a different video. Make sure you have some good power heads. That's going to help keep the water circulating. It's also going to help remove waste from the corals and bring nutrients to the corals. Also out in the ocean where the fish come from, they're used to a nice strong heavy current kind of moving them around. I guess maybe it's kind of like fish exercise, I don't know. But definitely make sure you have some good power heads. It's always important, in my opinion, just to go ahead and bite the bullet the first time and buy good power heads and don't cheap out on that. Just because cheap power heads typically only last a little bit, and then you're right back buying some more cheap power heads that might cost you 30, 40, 50 bucks, when initially you should have just bought some good power heads for 100 bucks and been done with that. Once we have our live rock in the tank and our sand and everything, we're going to start the nitrogen cycle, or the cycling cycle as people refer to it as. There's a lot of different things you can do to help the cycle period move a little bit quicker. You can add some damsels to it, and their waste will help get the nitrogen cycle going. Ammonium nitrites and nitrates will spike and stuff. I personally believe using live sand, live rock is the best way to go. You can use dirty water from your fringe tanks. You can use skim mate, just anything that's going to get the tank dirty, I guess we can say. Damsels are great because it absolutely helps the nitrogen cycle get going with the waste they produce, and it also gives you a little life in your aquarium. The downside of using damsels is that they're very territorial, and once the cycling period is done, you go to add other fish in there. They typically seem to beat up on your other fish, and they can really make you mad. The other thing that I don't like about damsels is that when you go to chase those guys down inside your aquarium to take them out, it is a huge pain in the butt. Typically, most people end up having to break their tank down just to catch 1, 2, maybe 3 fish. And not to mention the mess you're going to make. Cycling periods typically can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, maybe even 6 to 8 weeks. I've seen it happen before. I think anybody entering the hobby should definitely go through the cycle period and don't go the quick way, meaning getting dirty water from your local fish store or a buddy. You really want to experience the cycle, because during that cycle you're going to experience algae blooms, you're going to experience diatom blooms, just different things that's occurring in the aquarium that you would not experience if you pretty much set up a tank that's instant gratification. The other reason I think it is important that you experience is because 2 months, 4 months, 6 months down the road, when you do have that algae bloom, or you are experiencing a lot of diatoms on your glass and your sand, then you know how to take care of that. It'll prevent you from burning money, it'll prevent you from wasting your time, and it'll prevent you from killing a lot of fish and corals. These fish and corals can be very delicate. Alright, the next thing I want to talk to you about is our filtration. When you're going with a reef ready aquarium, you're going to have another sump or some type of configuration that's going to act as your sump. Simply what your sump is, it's just your filtration for your main aquarium, getting away from your typical canister filter. What happens with a reef ready aquarium, the sump, inside your sump you're going to have a return pump. The return pump simply pumping the water from your sump into your main aquarium. And then if you recall me showing you the overflow earlier in the first part of the video, the water flows down through that and into your sump. Once the water enters your sumps, it can go through a bunch of different chambers, different baffles, refugiums, just different items that you may or may not have set up in your aquarium. In this sump we have live rock that I took out the bio balls and replaced that instead of using bio balls. Live rock is a natural filtration that's found out in the wild, so it's definitely better than plastic bio balls that over time can house nitrites and nitrates and just simply cause you problems down the road. Here we have a protein skimmer. Protein skimmer just pulls out any type of organic waste or funk before it actually has the chance to turn into nitrites, ultimately keeping your aquarium a lot cleaner. In this little black tray that you may or may not be able to see real good, we have a bunch of different filter pads. The filter pads are there just to pull out the fine particulate matter or anything of any good size that may be floating around in the aquarium. Also, a lot of times as you feed your fish, it'll also pull out the food and stuff, so it's not sitting down in the sand, just kind of going to waste. It's a real good thing that, real good rule to practice is once a week you probably want to just change out those filter pads, because as those filter pads get dirtier and stuff, it's just also going to hold nitrites and nitrates. Next thing we have right over here is just a GFO reactor and a carbon reactor. GFO reactor is just simply helping us keep down on our phosphates so that we're not growing a lot of algae in our tank. Algae can take over real easy just because in a marine aquarium we keep the water nice and warm. It has good lights to grow, and then of course all the waste from the fish and any of the uneaten food will just feed that phosphate, and it can overtake our tank and eventually cover up our corals and just make our tanks look real ugly. Another thing back there is a carbon reactor. The carbon reactors just kind of keep the water nice and polished, nice and clear. It also keeps down on the smell of anything that the aquarium might have. Protein skimmer really produces a lot of waste. This cup will fill up, and it'll fill up with almost like a black coffee skim mate, we call it, and that really can stink up the house. So we want to make sure that as that cup collects all that waste, that we stay up on top of that so our aquarium's not smelling real bad. So next we have just some basic trace elements that we add to the aquarium every day. First we have some Thrive alkalinity. Next we have some Thrive calcium. And then we have some Thrive magnesium. And then we have some Thrive potassium. These are natural trace elements that's just found in natural seawater, and periodically throughout the week we're going to add one trace element or the other. Every other day we add calcium and alkalinity. Once or twice a week we might add some magnesium, and then about once a week we add some potassium. We do add some coral food or zooplankton or phytoplankton to the aquarium every day just to help keep the corals healthier and feed them. Good place to store this stuff is right up underneath your aquarium, so that every day you have to come to your aquarium and hopefully pay your aquarium a little bit of attention. While you're here, you just simply dose your aquarium. On the back of any trace elements or your calcium bottles, whatever it is that you'll have, it's going to tell you how much you should be dosing for your particular aquarium. Also, I like Thrive just because they have a new system out that they will program the size of your tank and what it is that you necessarily want to do with your tank. At the end of each test, if you have a LFS or a local fish store that is a Thrive authorized dealer, he'll print out actual on paper a little script for you so that you can take that home, and on that script it'll tell you exactly what it is that you need to dose throughout the week to maintain your aquarium perfectly. Very simple setup. Like I said, bigger tanks you might find more stuff on, smaller tanks you might find less, or a tank this size you might find a lot more stuff. Pretty much very simple setup. You can make it as easy as you want, or you can make it as complex as you want.